On a quiet morning, two young police officers stepped out of their van, responding to what seemed like a routine burglary call. Unarmed and unaware, they approached a three-bed maisonette, walking straight into an ambush so brutal it still haunts Greater Manchester a decade later. A fugitive, wanted for double murder, burst through the door, unleashing a storm of bullets and a grenade on the rookie officers. Then, as if untouched by the carnage, he strolled into a police station to surrender. 13 years on, Crime Pulse revisits a tragedy that scarred families, shook policing, and left a community reeling from its sheer savagery. Welcome to Crime Pulse. If you're new here, hit subscribe and join our growing community digging into the UK's most dangerous criminal underworlds. Like, share, and turn on notifications so you never miss a case. Dale Cregan's ambush on September 18, 2012 was a crime of staggering brutality. 32 bullets and a grenade unleashed with such ferocity that it scarred Greater Manchester forever. In mere seconds, the quiet cul-de-sac of Abbey Gardens, Mottram in Longdendale, transformed into a harrowing kill zone as two young police officers walked into a trap they could never have anticipated. As Cregan tore open the maisonette door, he locked eyes with PC's Fiona and Nicola Hughes, who believed they were responding to a routine burglary call. Without hesitation, he opened fire with a Glock pistol, its extended magazine blasting rounds into their chests. Their body armor held back instant death, offering a fleeting glimmer of survival. But Cregan's onslaught was relentless. In a frantic bid to escape, the officers split apart. Bones sprinted across the front garden, her heart pounding, while Hughes, fierce despite her 5 feet 3 inches frame, darted toward the path, desperate for cover. Cregan's gunfire didn't falter. A bullet ripped through Hughes's back, severing her spinal cord. She crumpled to the pavement, paralyzed as he closed in, firing 3 more shots with cold precision. Cregan's fury turned to bone, now cornered by the lounge window where he'd first spotted their approach. He unleashed 24 rounds in a deafening barrage, bullets tearing through the air, some stopped by her armor, others striking the house. Yet Bone's courage burned bright. She drew her taser, useless against Cregan's Glock, and fired, the prong sparking harmlessly on the pavement. 8 more bullets hit her. One slipped through a fatal gap under her arm, piercing her heart with lethal accuracy. Her final stand was extraordinary. Detectives later marveled at Bone's defiance, her body angled in a trained stance, one hand raised as if commanding the chaos to cease, shielding her fallen partner to the last. Cregan's savagery wasn't done. He turned back to Hughes, lying motionless, blood pooling on the cold pavement. With chilling calculation, he fired 3 more shots into the back of her head, her body enduring 8 gunshot wounds in total. As he fled, Cregan tossed a hand grenade into the garden where the officers lay dying. The explosion roared, its shrapnel tearing into Hughes's already shattered body, cementing a tragedy so vicious it would haunt a city and shock a nation. As the grenade's blast faded, the cul-de-sac of Abbey Gardens trembled with the eerie aftermath of gunfire, leaving neighbors frozen in terror. Dale Cregan, cold and unyielding, moved with a predator's focus, untouched by the horrified gazes around him. His mission was complete, but the nightmare was far from over. Cregan tossed his empty Glock near the fallen officers, its magazine spent, and slipped back into the maisonette. The night before, he'd lingered there, savoring a twisted farewell to freedom. Knowing his time was running out, he meticulously trimmed his beard and adjusted his black onyx false eye, preening for the infamous mugshot he knew awaited. Already hunted for the brutal murders of a father and son, Cregan had masterminded this deadly trap, holding 2 terrified residents hostage and placing a fake 999 call to lure PC's Fiona and Nicola Hughes to their doom. The hostages, spared by a stroke of fate, were left to wrestle with the weight of their survival. Seizing car keys from one of his captives, Cregan tore away in a stolen BMW, roaring down the M67 at a reckless 100 miles per hour. His destination? Hyde police station, just 3 miles away. In a chilling act of defiance, he strode into the station, calm and composed, and surrendered on his own terms. A grueling 42-day manhunt ended, but the cost was unimaginable. Over the radios of the fallen officers, call handlers' desperate voices crackled through the silence of Abbey Gardens. Golf Mike 41, please respond. Golf Mike 41, please respond. Only haunting, unanswered echoes filled the air. a gut-wrenching testament to the tragedy that would sear itself into Greater Manchester's soul. Abbey Gardens lay frozen in a nightmare of blood and loss. Backup officers stormed into the cul-de-sac, met by a scene that would scar them forever. A neighbor, shaking, pressed a blood-soaked towel against PC Nicola Hughes' stomach, where a bullet had torn through her back. A female officer took over, hands trembling as she fought to stem the relentless bleeding. A male PC knelt beside PC Fiona Bone, easing off her stab vest, but her lifeless gaze confirmed hope was gone. Paramedics swarmed in, battling to stabilize Hughes at the scene and in the screaming ambulance racing to the hospital. It was a cruel miracle she clung to life as long as she did, ravaged by 8 gunshot wounds and shrapnel scars. Tragically, her death was pronounced at the hospital, leaving a grieving city to grapple with the void. As the sirens faded, attention turned to the man responsible, whose chilling next move would stun even the most hardened officers. Unfazed by the carnage he'd unleashed, Dale Cregan sped toward Hyde police station, his cold indifference chilling the air. He dialed his girlfriend, as he had after each of his murders, his voice steady despite the blood on his hands. With a swagger that defied the horror he'd left behind, he strolled into the station, calm and untouchable, and faced the counter clerk with a chilling declaration: "I'm wanted by the police, and I've just done 2 coppers." Phone still tucked between shoulder and ear, mid-conversation with his girlfriend, Cregan extended his arms, daring the handcuffs to claim him. When asked if he was armed, his broad Manchester accent cut through the stunned silence. "I dropped the gun at the scene, and I've murdered 2 police officers. You were hounding my family, so I took it out on yous." Under arrest, Cregan coolly confessed to detonating the grenade, his words laced with a twisted logic. For the first time in his 5-month killing spree, a flicker of regret crossed his face, not for the lives he'd taken, but for their gender. "Sorry about those 2 that got killed. I wish it was men," he muttered, his words a haunting blend of callousness and calculation. That same day, Chief Constable Sir Peter Fay's voice trembled as he confirmed the loss of PC's Fiona Bone and Nicola Hughes, marking one of Greater Manchester Police's darkest days. The tragedy sent shockwaves through Britain's policing, leaving scars that refused to heal. Some officers, shattered by the grisly scene, could never return to duty. One, consumed by trauma, took his own life. For those who pressed on, from rookies to veterans, the ambush became a defining wound, shaping every step they took. As the nation reeled, the roots of Cregan's rampage traced back to a bloody summer that had set the stage for this unthinkable crime. Dale Cregan's chilling confession echoed through Hyde police station, the roots of his savagery traced back to a summer drenched in blood. The year 2012 closed with a wave of violence that set the stage for the horror in Abbey Gardens. On May 25th, Dale Cregan stormed into the Cotton Tree pub in Droylsden, his Glock drawn with lethal precision. His target was David Short, a 46-year-old underworld kingpin whose long-standing feud with Cregan over drug territories and personal grudges had reached a boiling point. David, however, was in the pub's restroom, leaving his son, Mark Short, a 23-year-old amateur boxer and rising figure in the Short family's criminal empire, exposed. Cregan unleashed a barrage of bullets, the shots echoing through the smoky air. Mark crumpled, blood pooling beneath the bar's worn floorboards. David emerged moments later, his anguished screams piercing the chaos as he cradled his dying son, his mind likely churning with promises of retribution. Cregan, reveling in his audacity, didn't flee into hiding. Instead, he boarded a business-class flight to Thailand. There he toasted to his kill, spending thousands on lavish dinners and beachfront villas, as if untouchable. But the law was closing in. On June 6th, as he stepped off a return flight at Manchester Airport, detectives swarmed, slapping cuffs on him for Mark's murder. Stone-faced during questioning at Ashton-under-Lyne police station, Cregan offered nothing, his silence a taunt. Released on bail due to insufficient evidence, he vanished into Manchester's shadows, his next move brewing. For weeks, he went quiet, plotting his next move against David Short, the feared and heavily convicted head of the Short family. Though David's partner denied it, trial evidence later revealed David had threatened to murder and rape those close to Cregan in retaliation for his son's death, fueling a deadly feud. On August 10th, as the world cheered Usain Bolt's 200-meter Olympic triumph on television screens, Cregan finalized his plan. He enlisted Anthony Wilkinson, a wiry accomplice desperate to settle a £20,000 drug debt owed to David. Together, they staked out Droylsden Cemetery, where David visited Mark's grave 3 times daily, a ritual of grief and rage. But when David didn't appear, Cregan shifted gears, his patience razor thin. They descended on David's home on Folkestone Road East in Clayton. David, bare-chested and unloading chrome furniture from his car, was caught off guard. Cregan and Wilkinson stormed in, chased him through his house, firing relentlessly. David fled, stumbling into an alleyway, where bullets rained down, cutting him apart. In a final, ruthless act, Cregan tossed a grenade onto David's lifeless body, its blast sealing the kill. As the smoke cleared, Cregan's path of destruction was far from over, drawing the attention of a city-wide manhunt. Later that day, police branded Dale Cregan, the prime suspect in the savage murders of Mark and David Short, a father and son entrenched in the city's criminal underworld. His chilling mugshot, a piercing one-eyed glare, the black onyx prosthetic glinting like a dark omen, plastered every newspaper, television screen, and newsstand across Britain. The image burned into the public's psyche, a haunting symbol of a killer unbound. A £50,000 reward dangled for anyone brave enough to betray him, yet fear, or fierce loyalty, sealed lips tight. Whispers swirled through Tameside's shadowy pubs, unconfirmed sightings of Cregan swaggering through crowded bars, a ghost in plain sight, mocking the law with every step. A quiet storm brewed within Greater Manchester Police. Whispers of unease grew into pointed questions about the manhunt that had failed to cage Cregan before his deadliest act. Some officers called the strategy of daily visits to his mother, Anita Cregan, a reckless gamble, one that stoked the fury of an already volatile killer. Cregan's own words upon his arrest cut like a blade. "You were hounding my family, so I took it out on Hughes." The accusation hung heavy, fueling a debate that refused to die. The controversy erupted into the open through the ongoing employment tribunal of former senior detective Pete Jackson, a whistleblower who dared to challenge the force's tactics. Jackson claimed he had warned senior officers that repeatedly targeting Cregan's family was provocative and dangerous and misguided, a strategy that risked pushing a ruthless fugitive to the edge. He insisted fellow officers and a forensic psychologist had echoed his fears, pointing to the powder keg of antagonizing a man like Cregan. Yet Greater Manchester Police fiercely contested these claims, dismissing Jackson's allegations that his protected disclosures led to his sidelining and blocked promotions, leaving a cloud of doubt over the force's leadership. Cregan thrived on his own rules, always a shadow ahead of the net closing in. No dramatic raid or SWAT ambush cornered him. On September 18, 2012, after unleashing his deadly ambush on PC's Fiona and Nicola Hughes, he didn't wait for the wail of sirens to hunt him down. Instead, with a composure that chilled the blood, he slid into a stolen BMW and sped to Hyde police station, surrendering on his own terms. His calculated move ended a grueling 42-day manhunt that had held Greater Manchester in a vice of dread, leaving a city to wonder how such a predator had roamed free so long. As Cregan faced the consequences, the courts prepared to unravel the full scope of his blood-soaked spree, delivering justice for a nation demanding answers. As the manhunt's shadow lifted and Cregan's chilling surrender stunned Greater Manchester, the spotlight turned to Preston Crown Court in 2013, where justice awaited a killer whose name had become a byword for terror. Dale Cregan, his one-eyed stare unyielding, faced a reckoning for his blood-soaked spree. In a packed courtroom, tension hung thick as he switched his plea to guilty toward the trial's end, admitting to the brutal murders of PC's Fiona Nicola Hughes, Mark Short, and David Short. The judge's gavel fell heavy, a whole life sentence, no chance of parole, a rare and final condemnation for a man who had left the city in ruins. Anthony Wilkinson, Cregan's accomplice, stood alongside him in the dock, his fate sealed with a life sentence and a minimum of 35 years behind bars for his role in David Short's murder. The web of Cregan's enablers unraveled further, ensnaring others who had fueled his rampage. Luke Livesey, a 28-year-old gym buddy, and Damien Gorman, a 38-year-old hardened criminal dubbed Scarface, were convicted for their part in Mark Short's slaughter at the Cotton Tree pub and the attempted murder of 3 others there. They drove Cregan to the scene and helped cover his tracks afterward, earning life sentences with a minimum of 33 years each, their futures buried under the weight of their loyalty. Jermaine Ward, a 24-year-old drug dealer known as Jam, faced the same grim fate for his role in David Short's killing. As Cregan's getaway driver, he witnessed Cregan leap into the car, covered in David's blood, and share a chilling fist bump with Wilkinson, a moment of twisted triumph. Ward received a life sentence with a 33-year minimum. Leon Atkinson, a Cregan associate from Ashton-under-Lyne, walked free from charges tied to Mark Short's murder. Prosecutors had claimed Atkinson hired Cregan after a Short family member slapped his mother 12 days earlier, but the jury was not convinced. Still, Atkinson could not escape the law's gaze. In 2022, at age 44, he was jailed for leading an international cocaine ring and laundering £10 million in illicit funds. During his arrest, police found letters from Cregan, addressed to Aki, stashed in his bedside drawer, a haunting reminder of their bond. The trial's verdicts closed a chapter, but the scars remained raw. As justice settled over the courtroom, unease stirred among officers and citizens alike, with lingering questions about the police tactics that had pursued Cregan, tactics some believed had ignited his final, catastrophic act. As controversy swirled over the police tactics that hunted Dale Cregan, one voice rose above the fray, raw with grief yet resolute in its clarity. Bryn Hughes, a former prison officer and father of PC Nicola Hughes, stood at the heart of the tragedy, his life forever altered by the loss of his daughter. Closely following the tribunal sparked by Pete Jackson's allegations, Bryn received updates from Greater Manchester Police, yet he brushed aside claims of tactical missteps as mere hindsight. His voice heavy with pain, Bryn shared, "I feel personally that there was not much that could have been done. We know there was a manhunt. They had to do certain things. It would have been a different story if they had not done what they did and tried to find this person. It was a targeted ambush. For all intents and purposes, it was a routine call. There were 6 on their shift that day. All 6 of them could have been killed. It was so ferocious. They did not even have time to react. It was that quick. From that point of view, it would be difficult to learn any lessons from that." His words turned inward, haunted by the weight of what if. If is the smallest word with the biggest consequence. I suppose if you sat alone and thought about these things, what if they had done this? What if we had done that? What if this would have happened? You could torture yourself every day. When I saw Nicola the night before, she leaned into the car to give me a kiss to say goodnight, and I stalled the car, and it jumped forward. She said, "You nearly ran over my toes then, Dad. You beat yourself up." Why did I not run over her toes? She would not have been able to go to work the following day. But you cannot do that. What if I had discouraged her from joining the police 3 years prior? You cannot. Bryn's raw honesty lays bare the human cost of Cregan's savagery, a father's unending grief woven into the fabric of a city's scars. His words linger, a testament to love, loss, and the unanswerable questions that haunt those left behind. Bryn's anguished words lay bare the unbearable cost of Cregan's brutality, a father's grief etched into a city's collective memory. Dive deeper into the UK's most gripping true crime stories with Crime Pulse. What does this case reveal about the cost of vengeance and the scars it leaves behind? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications to never miss a case that shakes you to the core.